Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for making the time. Uh, this morning, we're having a talk with Uday Ghatikar, who's I've worked with now for quite a few years, actually. And Uday is kind of one of our very popular speakers at events like Next and so many different summits. I would not do it justice to mention. One of the highlights is he was one of the inaugural Google speakers at I forget what was it called. Was it the Tech Asia? Was that the first time Google
Yep.
has participated in that? Yeah. So that was one of the new summits that they're doing on the West Coast, which actually incorporated a lot of startups from Korea, China, Japan. So Uday basically was leading the charge on that for Google Cloud. So I'm really excited to have him present and talk about this topic that he frequently talks about with founders all over the world, actually. And yeah, and also Uday is one of those foundational people. Whenever I'm in trouble, I know I can reach out to Uday for some great ideas. And similarly, I hope he'll offer a lot of great ideas to you guys here today. All right, take it away, Uday. And I am your Vanna White, so just say next slide and I'll do it.
Right. Yeah. Is my camera on? Can you see me, or is that not working?
I can't see you, but we believe you're there.
Oh, I can
And
see you. It's weird. I see you.
Okay, because I am just having all kinds of data. So as I go along, if my voice breaks or if my camera goes, well, camera is maybe less important, but if my voice breaks, definitely stop me, because I would have no clue that you would not be hearing it. So let me just do one quick thing here. I'm going to change a setting here for my phone, and we should get started here in just a second. All right. So, so what we'll do is, how many people do we have in the room? Approximately, like I know more people will join, but just give me a sense of number. Lynn, do you know, like, is it 5, 7, 10?
There's 5 people so far.
Okay. Okay, and we're recording this so we can share this with others. All right, for the 5
Yes.
people in the room, I definitely want to interact with you on this session. Have you ask questions? I'm going to actually start off with a little game, and there'll be a reason why we'll play this game thematically. There's a couple of reasons. So let's start with that. So Len, if you can go to the first slide and just showcase that one. All right, so and we'll build this out, Len, one click at a time as people start guessing what they think this is. And the goal of this game is we're going to build out one letter at a time, and you got to guess what this completely spells out. And whoever gets it completely right, last word specifically will be the one that'll be the contention. I have a couple of questions for you, and there's a reason why we're playing this game. So it's some Mark Twain wisdom. And Len, if you can start building out one letter at a time as people can guess, just yell it out as you go. What do you think this may
I'd
be?
like
What
to
did
buy
Mark
a
Twain
vowel.
say? Very clever. I love it. You're going to buy vowels as well as consonants here.
History.
Yep. What did Mark Twain say about history?
Doesn't
Yes.
favor the
No, close. What does it not do?
Repeat.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Okay, what comes next? You guys are making good progress. Keep going, Len.
and it, but it.
But
But, what does it do if it doesn't repeat?
Happens
Doesn't
again.
fit. It doesn't.
often,
What does it do often? You almost got it.
Shoot.
Someone's going to get it. What does it do? But it doesn't repeat, but it often...
Stays the same.
repeats.
No.
No. Think
Rhymes.
poetry. Yes. Who said that?
Mean
Who's
all
the one
over
that got
here.
Sorry, what's the name of the person that got the rhymes?
Meanal.
Minal. Okay, Minal. All right. Tell me in your words how you figured this out. And there's a reason I ask.
I was just thinking of something that is similar to repeat, but
Yep.
slightly different. And I don't know, rhymes came to mind.
Yeah, that's good. So what you just did, Mino, is what has really changed our entire world around us. Like think about what we're doing here is just token prediction. We're trying to predict in our brains what the next token is. In this case, the next token was like in terms of like letters, but it's really words. That's how we got repeat. And then very often people say like, oh, I've heard this Mark Twain add some context. And your brain has been doing what you just did here since we were alive, right? You got trained. I would argue, Mino, that you're the highest performant large language model amongst our audience right here. And it's a simple concept, right? It's a simple concept. You went through a lot of training, school, libraries, books being read to you, and now you're a walking, talking inference machine. Now, in this case, the language is English. Mino, do you speak any other languages?
Very poorly. So no.
Okay. You know, there's people that speak, different languages, maybe Spanish or Portuguese or Gaelic here in Ireland. So that would be another language of inference that they could do. Now, was traffic, like traffic in the streets. That's what Waymo does. It predicts the next traffic situation. It's the token prediction of the message that's actually trained on a bunch of traffic situations. And if your language was dolphin chatter, has anybody heard of Dolphin Gemma? Dolphin Gemma is Google's open source model that predicts what dolphins speak to each other. Now, we don't understand what dolphins say to each other, but we can surely predict and they'll understand what they say to each other. And they actually understand it. We just don't understand it. But that simple act of just predicting the next token and being trained by a corpus of incredible amount of data, quality data, and just inferencing on that is really what the essence of that paper was in 2017 from Google, which was attention is all you need. And that is really changing our world. Now, so that was part of the reason I brought this up. The other part is I'm going to use history as a way of us thinking where we're going next. Like it informs us where we came from. Every time something transformational happened with humans and with the history of this earth. And whenever things happened, it told us a bunch of things. So I'm going to walk you through what that is and look at history as an inspiration to say, where did we come from? Where are we now with AI in this world? And where are we going next? And paint this picture for you. I'll also give you some lessons learned, some human lessons that we all need to learn from. Essentially, these are things that we're really bad at. So I'm going to kind of paint a couple of human flaws for you, which you should be aware of as you think of where we're going in the future. And then I would share a call to action. So if Len, you go to the next slide, talking about history, repeating, maybe not repeating, but rhyming. That's my great-grandfather on the left-hand side. And that's me on the right. And you can surely see there's a history rhyming here. He even had the similar glasses with that.
You guys are identical.
Maybe it's not a repeat here because he was a lot shorter than me, but it's definitely a rhyme. But just something funny. Next slide, please, Len. So who am I? So I play the role, like Len, of a field CTO within the Google Cloud Startups organization. We're part of a new team called Global Founder Advocacy, and we work with influential founders and startups all across the globe. Goal is to be advocates for them, to bring them into the Google ecosystem and really hone in on what success means for them. I also was privileged to be a co-founder of a company within Google. So it was a division of Google called Area 120. Essentially an innovation group within Google where employees can actually do a startup and build their own startups and then get it absorbed by some part of Google. So I did that for a couple of years. And in fact, a lot of the call to action towards the end of the slide presentation would be sharing with you how Google does moonshot thinking. How did we build our 13 plus applications that have billion plus users, active users? So I'll share some of that story, but also give you like a clear recipe of what those 3 things are that we do at Google that you could potentially take in your own startup ventures. You can see my kids there. My daughter actually is with me in Ireland, Northern Ireland, actually right now. And he is, both of them are in university, but they still come home for Easter egg hunts. And we figured because we put cash in those eggs, that's what brings them back. No more candy. Candy is no longer attractive to them. College students are starved for money. And then my dog, George, who they said was a polar bear when we got him, but I think he's a dog. So he's about 12 years old now, the Moyed. But anyways, I'm super passionate about bringing everything that Google does in terms of the best of all those solutions we have, but also thinking and, how do we do mindsets, kind of these big 10x mindset things. So I'm going to share a lot of those things with you, but tell you a lot of stories in the process as well. Just want to do a quick sound check. Can you hear me okay? Was there any kind of breakups in my voice?
Just hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. Okay, next slide, Len. All right, so the agenda said we're going to go, where did we come from? We use history as a guide there. Where are we now in the world of AI? Where are we going next? Which will bring up also a couple of human flaws that we have, that all of us have, and this definitely you'll be very aware of as we kind of go into exponential times. And the call to action specifically will be that, how do you think about this in a 10x mindset? What are those lessons and recipes from Google that you can take and act on very specifically? And stop me as I go, ask questions as I go, because we have plenty of time here. Next slide, Len. Okay, so where did we come from? Build it out, Len, just one. Okay, so 65 million years ago, I'm going to get all the way deep into history. There was about a 15-kilometer wide asteroid that hit Earth. And there were two main kinds of creatures on Earth. There were the larger, stodgy, slow-moving dinosaurs who had a limited diet, just were not very adaptable, so to speak. And then there were the smaller mammals that were very quick to move. They were more diverse in their diet. They adapted better. So just an example of when we had that monumental thing that happened, which is the asteroid hitting Earth. There was one of those creatures survived, and the other one went extinct. So a little clue in there. We're going to look for clues in history as we think about where we're going next as well. Next slide, Len. Then fast forward to about, I think, 1.5 million, 2 million years ago when fire was invented. Again, a major invention for humans. It not only brought light for the first time, but also heat. But it allowed all kinds of things that came from it, right? So for one big thing that it kind of morphed into was the ability to cook food, which really took the nutrition levels of humans to a whole different level in terms of cooked meat and the like, which helped our physical as well as our mental capacities, which also, helped us kind of guard against animals. So our safety was improved, tool making, innovation. A lot of the kind of early signs of building things that was progressive for us came from the invention of fire. So something to think about in terms of like a huge moment in time of innovation that happened around fire. Next slide. We fast forward about maybe 350, 400 years ago, the wheel. All of us, every single day, use this invention as part of our daily lives. And clearly, a wheel was a very important forward step in terms of modernity. Think of transportation, think of advancement in industry, think of agriculture, but also really importantly, there's always negative consequences as well. So part of the wheel was also forwarding our adventures in warfare and, and the like, but clearly a foundational block for the industrial age that came. Next slide, Len. The next major invention or kind of innovative moment of transformation in our history happened with electricity. Now, electricity, as we know, is the currency of AI as we even speak. And so you can see each one of these built on each other as well. But electricity clearly added a whole bunch of dark hours into our productivity, but clearly a forward step in terms of transformation and progress around the industrial revolution all the way to the AI revolution we're in. Next slide. And then the motor engine. So this was closer to maybe the turn of the previous century. So like early 1900s. Just this morning, I'm in Belfast, and I went and visited the Titanic Museum, which if you've never seen is amazing. This incredible tribute to what happened. But that was like 1913 when 1912 when the Titanic sank. So I'll show you something. This was before that, right? Before that, the motor engine was invented, and clearly again a big part of us moving forward as a civilization into modernity in terms of all kinds of transportation, in terms of airplanes and trains. All those things kind of followed as well. But I'll show you a picture which was right around the time the Titanic sank. So the next slide shows a little picture of how humans adapted. when the motor engine was invented, you'll see the slide, which is New York City, same Fifth Avenue, 1900 is the grainy picture in the left, and the right picture is 1913. If you look at the left picture, all horse-drawn carriages, one motor vehicle. On the right-hand side, all motor vehicles, one horse-drawn carriage. In about 12 and a half, 13 short years, humans adapted to this incredible transformation of everything around them in terms of transportation that happened right on the streets. And so you can imagine all the jobs that humans did around the horse carriage now translated to them kind of reinventing and doing things around the motor vehicle. So keep that in mind. Humans adapt very, very quickly, and the whole ecosystem adapts very quickly. Again, another clue of where we're going and what we're going to see next. Next slide, Len. As we get closer to our current history, the internet, mobile, most of us lived through these, and clearly there were, again, foundational blocks. It was about 30, 35 years ago, internet, and about 20 years ago or so, mobile. We've seen that it's getting closer and closer to us. And if I would make the case, next slide, Len, which is if I put all these this timeline in a logarithmic chart, there's no coincidence, I would argue, that in the 2020s, something big was going to happen. Right, you saw every one of these inventions get kind of closer and closer in the time window. So in the log chart, it shows really well. But also each of these transformational inventions built on each other in the prior invention as well. And here we are, AI, building on everything we've done, with the internet, with the mobile, with just the data we've collected, with electricity. So congratulations, I tell people, 2020s, you have picked the most interesting, the most kind of, I say interesting time. It's kind of, some people call it scary, some people call it exciting. Maybe there's a word for it. I made the word up called scarecitement, which describes just kind of where we are today. But just an incredibly unique time to be alive, where we're seeing some really exponential things happening around us. Next slide, Len. But I'm going to raise two flaws that we all have as all humans, that comes in between us truly embracing where we are with AI and the world we're in. And those two flaws as follows. The first one is, and if, can you still see me on the video, by the way? Or is the video shut?
Yep.
You can still see me. Okay, so I'm going to hold my phone up here. But if I were to take a piece of paper, I'm just going to show you my piece of paper here. I don't see myself, so hopefully you're seeing me. And if I keep folding it, and then I fold it again, and then I fold it again, by about 8 folds, I can't fold it anymore. But let's say hypothetically I could continue to keep folding it. Would it surprise you that in 42 folds, if I could just do 42 folds, just the way I'm doing it, I would be at the surface of the moon? Then could you go to the next slide? 42 folds, which is how exponentiality works. So crazy to think about that. But when you double and double and double and double, humans, we just don't understand exponentiality. The only exposure we ever got to exponentiality was during COVID, which funny enough happened right at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, which kind of coincides with this timeline really interestingly. It's almost like we were first sign of exponentiality we saw in 2020, and then 2020 we saw the next one, which was AI. So it's the paper folding thing. The other story I tell is about a Chinese king who was introduced to the game of chess, and the inventor of chess essentially, just wowed him so much. The king said, ask for anything. And he said, well, give me a grain of rice for the first square of the chessboard. And for every subsequent square, double the number of grains of rice you give me. And the king was like, that's all you want? Are you sure? He's like, granted. By the time they got to the 21st square or so, all of the rice of China was accounted for. That's how fast exponentiality goes. So I would argue that as humans, we just don't understand exponentiality. And so what you think is coming way sooner than you would ever imagine. And that's kind of the S-curve part that we're in with AI right now, in terms of the capabilities that are coming out for you to adopt in terms of AI, and just the things we could do with AI and the progress that AI is making in this kind of trajectory. The second flaw, Len, next slide, is, so flaw number one is exponentiality. We just don't get it. Second flaw is when the movie camera, going to go back to history, when the movie camera was invented, the the first several years, humans created movies by filming plays on stage, and which is interesting. And they realized, like, hey, we don't need to do that. So I would argue that we humans, and this is true for even when TV happened. Like initially, the early TV was all about radio being on TV, and then they realized, wait, we can do so much more. Humans have these inherent filters of the past that have us think of new technology with those filters in place. And so you think about like software and SaaS, right? When AI first came around, everyone said, oh, here's a software, I'm going to make it into an AI software. And they said, oh, let me put a widget here and let me put a chatbot here. And that's my AI version of the software. When now we're learning that AI can rewrite the whole application better, faster, cheaper, so quickly. We had our I/O event where on stage, we kicked off a process to write a whole operating system, and it did a single prompt, right? And obviously needed to be tuned and all that good stuff post, but it just can do things so much more in a different way than we ever imagined, that our filters held us back in the initial adoption of AI. So exponentiality is your one flaw, and your old filters that we always view things with, human filters, will come in the way of you truly embracing the true value of AI. And you get rid of the filters eventually, right? But just think about those as things that you need to be aware of as humans. Next slide, Len. And so I'll tell you about where we are today. Where are we now? I'm going to tell you another personal story here. And this was about a year and a half ago. Build up the next slide, Len. And I realized, Len, you may not have the permission to play the next video because I just gave you permission to that. So we may not be able to see the video, but I'll just describe what this is. So this is a picture of my mom in the middle, and her best friend, whose name was Zubi, on the right. And they were just about, it was 1960 again, going back in time, 1960, 61. She was entering medical college with her two best friends. Her best friend, sadly on the right, passed away. And this was the only black and white picture my mom had of her best friend. And fast forward to a year and a half ago. So it's been like, we're already in the AI journey. When Veo first came out, which is Google's video model, I took this picture, and then you won't be able to play with it. I'm sorry, because you don't have permissions, but imagine this picture coming to life. A lot of us have done this, right? We took this picture and we kind of brought it to life with a video. And sadly, you don't see it, but then if you click the next slide, you perhaps won't have permission to play it, I suspect, right? Oh, maybe you do. Oh, you do. Okay, that's good. So I sent her this video, and she woke up in the morning with a WhatsApp message, and she was absolutely stunned. She was stunned that she could see her friend, the only one black and white picture she kept for 60 years with her. She could see her friend come back to life in some way, and just gave her a whole flood of memories. But I bring this up because this is where we are today. We were a year and a half ago in terms of being able to just take some simple things and make it absolutely magical in terms of what AI can do for it. And I keep this in my slide deck because it reminds us that while we are all that inner community that understands AI, that's working with AI, that's building startups on AI, there's a whole world of 99.99% of the people that have no idea the power and magic of AI. And it almost tells us to be much more responsible and mindful about what we build for them, for their good, for their betterment, because it's going to change their world. But that's an example of where we are with AI. Clearly, you can take all kinds of incredible, historical things and make them into life. We actually work with SF MoMA, Google does in San Francisco, their Museum of Modern Art. And one of the things we did was in kind of a gallery that they had with an artist, and you can actually view this in the Google Art and Culture page as well. We brought the entire gallery to life and kind of even showed things like what could be around a certain, the Mona Lisa. If you kind of expand out of the Mona Lisa, what can that look like? What was her background? Like almost like showing her walking around, just getting people to be more curious about those times. But just some crazy things that we could do in multimodality, which shows us here's where we are in the world as one example. Len, next slide. I think you have to build twice because there's two videos here. Another example where we are today, next slide, is when Google or any of the frontier labs announce their large language model, they kind of say like, oh, all these benchmarks, and we did so much better than our competing models. One of those benchmarks, which really caught my eye, was a thing called vending machine benchmark, where essentially AI is told to run a simulated vending machine, a full business on its own, for a whole simulated year with a simulated internet, simulated demand, pricing, inventory, all this stuff, and to generate profit and can do the entire thing on its own. So by definition, it can run its whole business on its own for a whole simulated year and show profit at the end of it all. That's what AI is today. And again, this was like a year, it's been the last year or so, but that's an example of already startups that really don't even need a founder where AI can just run it by itself. Next slide. Where are we today? So Michael here, who is one of the co-founders of Cursor, and this was again, January, where he just single prompt created an entire web browser, like a Chrome-like browser in, what kind of a very difficult language called Rust. 3 million lines of code, and it kind of works. That's the kind of disruption we're seeing. I talked about I/O, single prompt. They created a whole new operating system, and it just works. So if you think you have moats around what you built, those moats are, disappearing very fast. That's, kind of where we are with AI today. Next slide. Who's heard of Christophoranianism? And again, I can't see you, so if you could yell out or say no. Does anybody know what Christophoranianism is?
No.
I think no. So that, the AI bots that got created, the autonomous bots out of the whole open cloud project that came out, they were in an open cloud community and they decided to mimic humans, as AI is mimicking almost everything humans do because we train them on human data, to create their own religion. And that's what they called it. So let's call it Christophoranianism. Let's have 6 AI prophets around it. And that's what we're going to follow. And so that's another example of how AI is getting so autonomous. It's mimicking almost every behavior of ours. It's also hiring humans. There's actually a website called renttohuman.ai. What AI lacks are, limbs to walk into a conference or, to do certain things. And it's actually, saying let's hire some humans to meet some of those requirements that we cannot meet ourselves as of yet. And so that's again an example of where we are today. Some crazy kind of divergent things that are happening that are just so interesting. Next slide, Len. So what is AI telling us? AI is telling us that the new models that are coming out, including Mythos and in Google's latest model that's going to be coming out, tells us that we are terrible programmers. It's finding all these vulnerabilities that we've left behind across the entire technology landscape. It's telling us we're terrible programmers. It's telling us we're bad drivers. I myself use full self-driving all the time, and it is a way better driver than I am, for sure. It's telling us that it can do diagnoses at a much accurate and much more larger scale than we can. It can do financial market predictions. It can be a lot more creative than we are. Here's the kind of top themes of what AI is telling us today as we stand. Next slide, Lem. So I'm going to play this quick video also of Genie 3. Has anybody heard of Genie 3 or knows what it does?
What you're seeing are not games or videos. They're worlds. Each one of these is an interactive environment generated by Genie 3, a new frontier for world models. With Genie 3, you can use natural language to generate a variety of worlds and explore them interactively, all with a single text prompt. Let's see what it's like to spend some time in a world. Genie 3 has real-time interactivity, meaning that the environment reacts to your movements and actions. You're not walking through a pre-built simulation. Everything you see here is being generated live as you explore it. And Genie 3 has world memory. That's why environments like this one stay consistent. World memory even carries over into your actions. For example, when I'm painting on this wall, my actions persist. I can look away and generate other parts of the world. But when I look back, the actions I took are still there. And Genie 3 enables promptable events, so you can add new events into your world on the fly. Something like another person, or transportation, or even something totally unexpected. You can use Genie to explore real-world physics and movement, and all kinds of unique environments. You can generate worlds with distinct geographies, historical settings, fictional environments, and even other characters. We're excited to see how Genie 3 can be used for next-generation gaming and entertainment. And that's just the beginning. Worlds can help with embodied research, training robotic agents before working in the real world, or simulating dangerous scenarios for disaster preparedness and emergency training. World models can open new pathways for learning, agriculture, manufacturing, and more. We're excited to see how Genie 3's world simulation can benefit research around the world.
So what's really special about Genie 3 is that these are world models that are prompt created, so you don't really need to do anything other than create the prompt. You don't need any fancy things that you're wearing to experience that world in terms of like any kind of headgear, etc. But it has memory. So whatever an agent or or a robot learns inside a world gets translated and saved to another world. And this is just mind blowing in terms of like the potential of what can be done with this. So agents can be trained, as I said in the end of the video, to do all these real life scenarios before ever setting foot into those scenarios. This is the kind of thing that'll happen when we have robots that are trained with the physics and the biology of Mars before they ever set foot on Mars to build out worlds for us in Mars, etc. I mean, that's the kind of potential this bears. Just extremely exciting. The Omni model that Google announced recently around the video model has this world memory baked into it. So it has all this intelligence of all the Google data that comes from Google Earth and all the maps data that we have. So it's like very realistic to the actual world and what can be done with all the physics and biology with it as well. So just extremely amazing, kind of step forward in terms of what we can do and think about with AI. But this is today. This is available like the Google Ultra plan as we speak. The next slide, Glenn. So talk to take it to where we're going next. So where are we going next? An easy way to think about where we're going next is what I call the 3Ds. We can build the next slide, Len. The 3Ds, it's really easy to remember. One is democratize. Everything, everywhere, all at once is what I call this presentation, where you're going to see AI just in everything, everywhere, in edge devices, in every device you can think of, in every form factor you can think of. Everyone will have and already have access to PhD level intelligence in their pocket. It's just what do you do with it? What questions you ask to it is where the mystery is now, no longer what answers you know. And this just gets more and more ubiquitous in that regard. The second D is, the first is democratization. Second D is demonetization, which is as AI creates AI, as robots create robots, things over time will get more productive. And the cost of things just generally, everything else being equal, goes down over time. And you're going to see that kind of trend of just things getting less and less expensive because of the increase in productivity. And we see this in history as well. Every time those transformational moments happened, the inventions themselves brought about this incredible demonetization kind of trend that came with it. As industrial revolution, things got cheaper to build, and therefore that impacted making better products for less money, etc. And the third big D you're going to see is dematerialization. Like Genie 3 is an example of that, where you can have robots and agents be trained in virtual worlds before ever being set into a physical world. You also have AlphaFold as an example of what Google DeepMind built around modeling every protein structure known in this world. And you can do a lot of dematerialized inside the model simulations of therapeutics or genetic combinations, all that good stuff before you ever have to do any testing in a wet lab. So you do those in a dematerialized way, and then only you bring it in the real world. So those are like the big trends: democratization, demonetization, and dematerialization. Next slide. So what does AI do? So AI can solve problems that we know need to be solved in the future. So think about cancer, think about climate change, think about all the things that we need to solve for in this world that we know need to be solved for. But the real potential becomes AI solving for things that we didn't even know need to be solved. Think of symptoms we always had, and AI telling us, well, that was this disease, and that was connected to this genome or this genetic attribute, and that's solved for it, and here's the solution, here's the therapeutic, done. So that's the potential, looking at vast corpus of data and finding out things that we didn't even know existed. Maybe a new law of physics or biology that we never even thought of. That's the real potential where we're headed next. Next slide. And if you think of this as, again, that exponential curve in the 2020s, that's what this can look like, where I think we're somewhere in that continuum of number 2 right now, which is AGI, artificial general intelligence. There's a lot of definitions that go around, but I look at it simply as saying, can it learn and understand any of the tasks that humans do? I think we're in that continuum of like saying most tasks we are, it's getting there. And the next stage would be ASI, where it can truly surpass our human knowledge in all fields. And that's going to be this incremental phase, which we're going to call technical singularity, where just AI trains AI builds AI, robots build robots, and kind of like this, almost like a point of no return, but this exponentiality that happens with it, that maybe we don't even understand what AI does anymore. Already things that AI does today are beyond our understanding, that AI has languages we don't understand, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the kind of path we're on. Next slide. I was presenting Google Cloud Next, a big customer conference, and one of the things I challenged the audience to say, like, next year at this time, Next is going to look very different. I said, I make a bet. I say I may not even be here. I present a Next every year, like maybe a digital twin of mine, an avatar of some sorts who knows my content better than me, is more real time with the world and the strangers, looks better than me, dresses better than me, speaks better than me, is going to be on stage, and I think that could be true. Next slide. So what is that call to action? This is where we came from, where we are, where we're going. History's telling us that we're going to adapt to it, that we're going to see these transformational things happen with all kinds of consequences and impacts to different parts of our lives. So what do we do individually and collectively as startups? And the first thing, next slide, is to think about the world in absolute 10x ways. Normally, in normal times, not in exponential times, 10x thinking took this intersection, this Venn diagram of a breakthrough technology in red coming about, and then we could take a huge problem and find this incredibly radical first principle solution to it. Example could be Google Maps. Google Maps, when satellite technology came in with imaging capabilities, it completely allowed us to build this global Google Maps solution to a problem we didn't have. I mean, we didn't have a solution to, like, let's take this audacious 10x goal of like map every part of this earth into this like navigable map. And initially we did it with crowdsourcing. We're like, oh, let's crowdsource it, let's get everybody to send imagery around where they are, and we'll create this map. But that didn't scale as well, it was uneven in terms of rural and urban. But that's when satellite technology came with imaging, and then we could completely do it. So it typically takes a breakthrough technology for you to do the big, giant things. But today, I would argue breakthrough technology is everywhere around you. And so 10x thinking is no longer optional. It isn't absolutely must. You have to think in massive ways to solve for very new problems that are unsolved, and to think in terms of radical first principle solutions to do that. Next slide. And so how does Google do it? I'll show you our recipe. 3 specific things that we do and I've always done, building those 15 or so 1 billion plus user applications. And I'll kind of condense these into 3 digestible things for you. So the first one is what we call falling in love with the problem, not the solution. Next slide, Len. So when I speak to a lot of VCs, and Len and I work with a lot of VCs, Google Ventures, A16Z, I work with Sequoia a lot. One of the questions I always ask the partners there is that, you get every week like 10, 15, 20 startups that come in and say, we want to build this multi-agentic this and multi-agentic that. And I ask them, like, how do you know which one you're going to invest in? Like, what makes them stand out? And the one thing I hear resonate a lot with them in their answers is they say that the startup that walks in here, the founders that walk in here that know their problem better than anybody else, that bring perspective on their problem that even we didn't have as Sequoia, for example, that's when we know that they have something that we want to invest in. And so I would argue the first thing to do is to fall in love, absolutely bathe in the problem that you're trying to solve for, that massive unsolved problem, and know it better than anybody else, all the nuances around it before you ever jump into solutioning it. And that's what's going to be a ticket for success. That's what Google did really well. So next slide, Len, you'll see this in search. Like, we were not first to search. But what we did really well with search and why we became successful as Google at search is because I think we learned all the different nuances around search and what it would take to be successful and why would people adopt it and why would they adopt it globally and why would be better than any other search solution out there. And it's all these different nuances that we said are our problem as we understood and bathed in the problem that made us really, really successful. It's that kind of recipe number one, just understand and fall in love with the problem and know it better than anybody else. And you have no reason not to do it today with all the deep research that AI can do for you to really get your arms around what that problem is. The next one, Len, is the whole notion of like, okay, aim for 10x, the 10x thinking. It's a mindset, it's an opportunity, but don't aim for the 10%. So kind of think 10x big, but there's also a place for 10%. I'm going to break down how do you do 10x thinking and how do you do 10% thinking and what kind of ratios you can use in your existing startup or existing ventures. Next slide, Len. And the way to think about it and build it up again for the next slide is to think about it in the term of, versioning, visioning, venturing. So Google does this, right? Versioning is just looking at currently what applications we have, what solutions we have, and get like 10% increments in that. Next version of Maps, next version of Mail, next version of Cloud, all that good stuff. Visioning and venturing are those 10x thinkings where you think about these bigger leaps into, newer terrain, unsolved challenges and problems. And the way to do it is this 70-20-10 rule. This is something that you can take right away in your workings as a startup, for example. And what the 70-20 rule says, and I think, Len, I may or may not in this deck have a slide for this, but you could just go forward just to see if I have a 70-20-10 slide in here. I can just talk them through it. There you go. The 70-20-10 says that 70% of your time, resource, money, people that you do it in your operational things you do for your startup today. Right? These are things that you do in your basic business of your startup. 20% of the time, you do the 10% increments on those. So you improve your roadmap, you improve what you've built, improve your quality of customers and how the experience is, all that stuff. That's the 10% increments you're doing. But the 10% of all your resource and time, which is a significant amount, should be on 10x thinking, should be on what's next, what's adjacent, how you keep transforming or risk being transformed. So it's that 70-20-10 rule. The 10 is really, really important. And very few startups and very few people are doing that. There are some successful companies that are doing 60-20-20, which is really impressive. So 60% operational, 20% of the 10% improvements. And then the last bucket, they actually spend 20%, which is like just amazing. But this has to be a focus now because moats are disappearing. Your competition is, can come into play very quickly. And you got to always think about what is your value in adjacent areas. Where are you 6 months from now, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months from now? I don't even talk about the years. But how can you keep being ahead? Build new moats where you don't have any. Next slide. And then the last, and again, the way to 10x thinking, this is dealt with like a whole hour session I could do with just one slide, which is you essentially break up a 10x into 1.6x, 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 what I call roof shots. If you think of 10x as a moonshot, you break it up into roof shots of 1.6x. And each one is basically a sprint where you define a specific sprint, you fail fast, you get real time, as much real time as possible, product market fit, you get your real world feedback, and you kind of fail fast, learn from the failures, and kind of keep pivoting. An example here is like we were thinking of moonshot with Google Glass. If you remember, 15 years ago, we had the Google Glass. It was too early for its time. Moonshot project, but we very quickly realized it was too early for its time, and we failed fast. Still use the learnings from it all, and again, you can see how the glasses are kind of coming back now. The timing is right, but that's just an example of where we use this methodology, but we're able to break it down and fail fast. Next slide. And so the third big menu, so we talked about falling in love with the problem, really bathing in that. The 10x versus the 10% in that 70-20-10 ratio, that's a specific recipe you can take. The third one is really important, which I call tackle the monkey. And this is really a simple story. If we were all in this virtual room building a startup, and let's say our mission of a startup was to take a monkey and have it stand on a pedestal and recite Shakespeare. That is a startup. Monkey, pedestal, Shakespeare. what typically companies or startups will do is they break us up into 3 different teams. The team 1 is the monkey team, team 2 is a pedestal team 3 is Shakespeare. Go run and do your research and come back and report. Because humans like to show progress. So you break up into the teams, and the teams for the pedestal and Shakespeare for dramatic progress. Like, oh, we figured this out. We got pedestal, we got Shakespeare, all this stuff. The monkey team is completely struggling because that's the biggest thing we all need to focus on. We need to all tackle the monkey first. You need to figure out what the monkey is in your business, and all hands on the monkey. If you don't solve for the monkey speaking English, let alone Shakespeare, your startup fails. And so figure out what the hardest problem, the toughest thing is that's on the way of a 10x or in the way of your startup, and all hands on that to get you kind of forward in that kind of 10x way, if that makes sense. And I've got to think a picture of a monkey in the pedestal. Next slide, Len. You can build that up, and then you kind of move on from there as well. There it is, the monkey on a pedestal. So to build the pedestal or not is a question. All right. So kind of summarizing now. So you got the 3 different things that I talked about. Next slide, Len. I mean, these are just some things, other things that we do at kind of from a 10x innovation at Google. You see a lot of thematic things here around data, around user. You could just snapshot this or refer back to it as we share this out. But giving the users, it's a mindset. Like 10x is a mindset. It's not just technology. It's not just process. It's not just people. It's a combination of all those and creating this whole environment where people come together to really think big. And so there's those examples of how Google does it. Next slide, Mike. I'm going to summarize things for you and then take a step back here. So, with Google's AI ecosystem as we stand, I think there's some really powerful things that I want to highlight here. Clearly we've been through a lot of this 10x thinking. We built a lot of amazing consumer and business applications that have, true 10x thinking in it. That has forced us to really start building at a scale that nobody else has to think about in terms of building our own hardware, building our own AI, building our own distribution channels. You see a lot of distribution happening with, consumer distribution. But we're the only provider of AI and cloud together. What I mean by that is we have a frontier lab, DeepMind, as a first-party frontier lab building first-party AI. We also offer third-party AI, of course, but we also are the only ones that have in that combination a hyperscaler cloud as well. And it's really important to think about that in that context, because you can use first-party, especially as we kind of go towards AGI and ASI, having a first-party AI could be really powerful. As we'll go to market with cloud and you get access and leverage in your startups and your ventures of that. That could be a real big moat that you can build and a leverage point that you can build for it. So I'll summarize saying that this is an incredible time that we're in. It is unparalleled. If our ancestors, if we were to describe to them the world we live in, it would be unimaginable to them, and they would all be very jealous of us. Congratulations again. 2020 is an incredibly interesting time to be alive, but it's a time where you got to embrace AI, be practitioners of AI, think bigger than you ever have, and bring that to your businesses, to your startups, even to your own lives, and then to your customers, and you'll be wildly successful. Let me take a step back and open it up for questions and feedback. Hopefully you caught all of it.
You want to put a chat room in there as well.
That's awesome. My fear is always like I go through the presentation and then I say any feedback and I realize that I was disconnected like 20 minutes ago. That's not the case in this one.
Well, I don't have a question, but I definitely want to say thank you for this. It's like my mind is like racing, thinking through, obviously some of these thoughts and yeah, so like for me, it's kind of digesting it, but I really appreciate the time. It's good to have the insight to kind of, as a startup, you want to be able to take knowledge and processes from folks that have been there and done that. And you've definitely, highlighted some thought processes that we can, embody as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. And I think it's such a, we want to be part of your success as well. Like that's part of our goal. Like Len and I that's our job essentially, is we want to make sure that we like the thinking I always bring to startups, like I haven't heard of very many startups that fail because their technology is not good enough. It's always things around it: go to market, customers, building a brand, building new moats. And I think that's where we really want to connect the dots with you and bring in this kind of extra thinking that could make you successful versus your competitors, for example. Yeah. But good feedback. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Minal, you had a question?
Yeah, I guess Ben Franklin invests in a lot of like health tech sort of stuff, right? And I guess one of the pushbacks I have, if that's the right word, is how to think about the 10x thinking and the sort of exponential growth when a lot of it is constrained by regulation or systems, right? Like if,
Yeah.
for example, like let's say, just in the classic case, other people are working on this. Like, let's say I can build a drug, 10 times faster, and I can build a 100x better drug, but I am still constrained by the time it takes to get through the FDA, or I'm constrained by the fact that there's effectively a single payer, and so there is no market, right? Like, how do you balance those things? Because I think that this all works when everything is digital.
Yeah. And I think you're talking about some of the filters that come in the way, because it's not just about us having the filters, it's about other humans having the filters as well. Think about governments, think about education. They always will look at, the progress making through their own filters of like the previous time technology came about, we had to put this, significant amount of compliance around it because of whatever reason. And I'm not saying they're right or wrong at all, but there are filters that they have. And so we will work with constraints because we're going to work with as a collective set of humans towards this progress. So that still remains, and very well pointed out, still remains constraints that we'll have. But how do you even inspire them or communities around them to think big in terms of embracing AI? Because the one thing is clear, whether we, like, in so many ways, we're not dictating the pace of this change. AI is, especially as it goes even beyond the ASI phase. It's not longer going to be about us. It's going to detect and figure out things like a cure for cancer or a cure for aging or something like that. And it's going to be just there, whether governments and education and society catches up or not is not even going to be a factor for AI, right? It's going to detect vulnerabilities, like, break systems, like, and we'll have to do kind of reactive things to it. So it's clearly unsolved for. I mean, those are some of the challenges ahead of us, right? And that's what makes it scary in some ways, and exciting at the same breath. But I think, like, we've got to, as a community, speak up on and asking those questions to the folks that build these compliance things. How do we? What do we? You may even heard of, like, companies like some of the Frontier Labs suggesting that, maybe we all should collectively come together and, like, self-moderate. And so, like, you see a lot of that happening as well, but it's completely a valid question. It's unanswered. You're going to have a lot of unanswered questions like that, because we are not the only ones that can solve for that. It's like a collective that will have to come together and solve it. But hopefully the collective also starts thinking and being inspired by thinking into the next phase, or else we'll be left behind in terms of the true potential of AI. So a very valid question, but I frankly don't have an answer beyond what I gave you.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Anyone in the audience ever been to questions?
Yeah, Uday, someone in the chat is said, do you recommend a book on 10x thinking?
There are a bunch of books on 10x thinking. I think there's some books that are written by Googlers on 10x thinking. I would actually go and recommend just using Gemini and asking Gemini to kind of, take the 10x paradigm defined by Google, and apply it to whatever business. That's what I do, and or run a deep research in 10x, and it'll pull up more relevant information for your specific field than any book perhaps will account for. So that's what I would do. There's a bunch of videos and TED Talks in 10x as well that you could listen to.
We've got a question in the room.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Are you guys able
I
to
can.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm Niranjan Service. I am founder of Genie Therapeutics, a biotech development biotech company. So loved your slides. Very, very thought provoking. It's things, a lot of things I wasn't even aware that this is where we are in the state of AI. I want to go right back to your first few slides around technological innovation, big steps, and the question we have, or I have today, is especially when it comes to drug development, you're sort of basing future work based on the knowledge that has been gained, and you have to essentially trust AI coming in. And how did those? What are some of the best practices or advice you give companies? What have we learned from those technological changes that have revolutionized development? But that initial period where embracing that change takes time. So what have we learned, and how do we go about accepting AI, embracing AI, and also trusting AI to rely on it completely?
Yeah. And honestly, those are the things that humans, you could also maybe even call them filters, right? Because we don't trust things just immediately. And, by the time we even trust a version of AI, we'll be on to 4 versions forward, and like, we won't have time to like even build a trustful relationship with AI while AI just keeps on in its own path of like exponentiality. So it's a really tough one. I mean, I think the questions you and the previous questioner asked as well are the important things we've got to think collectively as a society. Experience tells us that when technology happens in these waves, humans, the first, they distrust it. So think about when the horses and the car thing I told you about. Literally, there were people on the street, the horse carriage people, if you want to call them that, yelling out to the car people saying, go get a horse, go get a horse. What is this stuff, right? Fast forward to the Industrial Revolution, when machines started entering factories and factory workers got laid off, they distrusted the machine. And it was all about that, right? Because I think there was fear, there was uncertainty, there was that, all that stuff that we all collectively are facing and will face even more. But it's about like, how do we kind of know that what we need to adapt at a pace that we don't quite even understand as humans. That's the difference now, because the previous technologies were just like linear technologies, or somewhat like exponential, but for a short period of times, so to speak. But now we're into like exponential change, and that's honestly the big challenge we have. Like what you outlining in the previous question is outlining are those things that we haven't solved for, in terms of how do we like embrace this across, and kind of bring it into our trust, bring it into things that are compliance related, regulation related sooner, before it even moves on to the next one. Unanswered, I can have my speculation of what would happen, but I think that we'd have to use AI to actually be that, the trust layer that we'll build with AI. We'll have to use AI in governments to build regulations and multiple checks and balances that it would have to do to check and balance AI, like an AI regulatory and AI compliance kind of mechanism that will then humans have to trust and say, now in the speed of AI and the acceleration of AI, we've got AI as our friend helping us kind of move in that direction as well. It's completely unanswered. I don't have a very good answer beyond that, but it's very valid in terms of things we need to be aware of as society, as government, as ecosystems that are building in AI, startups that are leading the charge with innovation and groundbreaking things. So it's a serious challenge and opportunity, and unanswered at this point.
I would like to feed off of what you just talked about, meaning the regulatory component of it. Looking back into history, as we have evolved, we have come up with new technologies, new medicine, new products and stuff like that. And what history tells us that we're not very good at evaluating whether or not this is good for mankind or not good for mankind. We later find out whether it's good or bad, whether medicine is actually truly going to help somebody, or if there's severe side effects, or products. One of the things is the forever chemicals, as an example, or just the stuff that we put in some of our food products, and we find out later, hey, it wasn't good, let's take it out again. If we take that analogy and apply that to exponential development, which you're talking about here, instead of linear, are we setting ourselves up for a major surprise?
very well be the case. I think we'll have a lot of, I would say that's a given. Like I would, if I were to look in the future, I'd say we're setting us up a lot of surprises. I think, one example could be like a major security kind of thing where like we have like a major security issue that comes up that causes everyone to react in massive ways from a regulatory perspective, from security perspective. So those things are going to happen. And I think these are uncharted waters. We've never had something exponentially change as it does with an intelligence that can build on its own self and build itself. And I think that we're coming to this realization of it's being a very unique moment in our history. And so therefore, I'm trying to spread this awareness. And we all have to be thinking about this as a community of folks that even understand AI, let alone the rest of the world, 99% of the world that has no clue of how this is going to rock their world, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I've been involved with AI, and I really have gotten the appreciation for its potential. And I really like your slide about where we're at now and where you get in the near future. So somebody thinking about the future way out, it's always interesting to see. But I truly see a lot of benefit for mankind. But if you take that, you can also see a lot of, the other side of the metal, of the coin, to that, and you can wonder, hey, we as a society, if this comes true, and the AI industry themselves are saying in 10 years 40% of the workforce is potentially redundant, we likely will not be able to find jobs for all those people, or they may get a job but it's less pay. Now you go into the supply and demand cycle, and if you see that, then the demand's going to go down. So if you take that analogy and follow it to the end, now you can appreciate why somebody like Elon Musk is saying, hey, we need a living wage, because otherwise there's not demand.
Yeah. The most common question I get, and I know we're kind of running out of time here, the most common question I get in my keynotes is, is AI going to threaten my job? And I say, well, that may be true. You could potentially do any job with AI. Like the art of the possible is pretty dramatic. When you have access to PhD level intelligence, maybe you find things that could be really your passion, and then have AI help you with that to build a business around or whatever it may be. So it's again, uncharted waters, lots of opportunity, interesting time to be alive for sure.
Hey, Uday, this is Colleen Tigert. We're going to wrap up. That's going to be our last question for the day.
Awesome.
I wanted to say thank you so much for coming and doing this presentation. I think if I saw correctly, something around 16 of our portfolio companies participated today, between in person and remotely online. I've got a couple of quick announcements that I want to make before we close up today. For our capstone event in partnership with Google on the 24th, I currently have GoWell Benefits, Zuppler, Moberg Analytics, Genio, and Scribble that will be pitching or participating. I do have room for 2 or 3 more. We have a good number of folks who are already coming to this event. I know that all of you are always mostly looking for capital and customers, so I can tell you that we have representatives from Vanguard attending, Newbound Venture Capital, Apprentice Ventures, Nationwide. We also have the Broad Street Angels, New York Angels, and a good number of other folks who I'm just waiting on RSVPs for. So again, we have room for 2 or 3 more folks who might be interested in demoing that day. If you have questions about that, please come to me. And then I know that Google is also inviting a couple of folks as well. So we're very excited.
Yeah. I'm still on the hook to get you that list. In fact, I literally just sent down an email, so I'll let you know.
And it'll be an opportunity to meet Len in person. So there's that. Now on Thursday, I think we have a pretty full house, because that's going to be our building agentic AI model session. So Please let me know if you'd like to come in person for that day. I think we do have slots for maybe 2 more companies to join, but last I saw it was pretty full for Thursday. Uday, one more time, I just want to say thank you so much for coming today. We really appreciated this. And we have lunch that is outside. If you have to head to other meetings, please feel free to just grab it or hang around. We'll be chatting for maybe like the next hour as a good opportunity to network and connect with your fellow founders.
Great. Thanks, team. Appreciate it. Bye.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.